So, we're hearing that Chelsea want Alejandro Garnacho. James, what can you tell us?
This is fascinating, isn't it? Manchester United and Chelsea, they've got a good relationship. We've seen as late as the summer when Jadon Sancho signed for Chelsea in a loan with an obligation to buy. We thought Napoli were the front runners to sign Alejandro Garnacho from Manchester United. We know United dealing with PSR constraints whereby they may feel forced to sell the likes of an academy graduate in the form of Alejandro Garnacho. But the door has been opened to Chelsea, because Napoli have turned their attention to another forward because they're not sure whether or not they'll be able to sign Garnacho in that window. And that's Karim Adeyemi at Borussia Dortmund. Now, our colleagues in Italy have reported that United have budged when it comes to their asking price for Garnacho. They want around £55 million. Napoli at this moment in time want to spend around £46.5 million. So clearly there is quite a significant gap there. Chelsea have been keeping abreast of these negotiations, and it's felt they're biding their time now to potentially make a move either in January or in the summer. We know they're long-term admirers of Alejandro Garnacho. From a Manchester United point of view, they'd rather sell him to Napoli than Chelsea. They don't want to be coming up against him. They'd rather he thrives in Naples than doing damage to a potential title bid down the line if Alejandro Garnacho performs well for Chelsea. So that is the fear for Manchester United. But ultimately, they want to sell. They're not going to budge that asking price. They want good money. If Chelsea are willing to get close to £55 million, then this is a move that could happen. So we wait to see if Chelsea now come in with an official bid.
Well, they want good money, but they've already dropped it down to this anyway. Mark, does he fit? Would he fit the Chelsea profile?
It certainly appears on the surface that this is the type of player that over the last 18 months or so that they have been looking to sign. Young, hungry players that they pick up for essentially cheap, amortise the finances over a long period of time, and therefore it doesn't cost them a huge amount of money in one go. Obviously, he's only 20 years old. He's shown that he's got the magical touch and he's got so much potential, particularly in the Premier League. So he definitely fits the profile. Interesting what James was saying there about Napoli maybe going cold on the deal. Chelsea just waiting in the wings. Could that be a part of their bargaining chip where they turn around to Manchester United and say, hey, you got PSR problems. You need to sell this boy who cost you £420,000 not that long ago. So you're going to make huge profit on him. We're the only show in town. So you've got to take this deal. Otherwise, you may run the risk of finding out in the summer, we can't sell him, we need to get rid of him, we need to sell players quickly before that July the 1st deadline, which we saw last season with the likes of Nottingham Forest and Newcastle doing little pieces of business to make sure they didn't fall foul of PSR. Could this be a situation? So it's interesting that Chelsea are just waiting at the moment to see what happens. They may be the only show in town.
The Manchester club's dominating this window, aren't they? So let's talk Manchester City, James. Another done deal for them today. Tell us all about it.
Third signing already in this window, and there could be more business to come as well. Omar Mamouche, we've been speaking about him for a number of weeks. That deal finally confirmed this morning at 9 a.m. It's a really significant deal. This, a fee of £59 million, plus a further £4.2 million in bonuses. So City were happy, I think, with the deal they got. They were looking around £59 million. Eintracht Frankfurt wanted around £69 million. But with those bonuses, I think all parties are relatively happy. He signed a 4.5-year deal, so it's half the deal that Erling Haaland's got. That's not a 10-year deal, but 4.5-year deal. So he's committed a good portion of his career to the champions. We see him there in the number 7 shirt as well. The Egyptian forward, inspired by Mohamed Salah, will now come up against him in a Manchester City shirt. So really exciting signing this. He's been brilliant for Eintracht Frankfurt this season. Finally, he's through the door. We look to see him in action soon.
Yeah, feels like the rebuild is certainly on. Kyle Walker's not going to be part of that, Mark. Is he a Milan player yet?
Not yet. Close but no cigar. We've seen, thanks to our colleague Sky in Italy, some pictures of him arriving at the airport, just waving to a few of the press that had gathered by the airport to see him. You can see a few Milan fans as well. That's after Manchester City accepted Milan's formal offer of a loan for the rest of this season. And Sky in Italy also saying that this potentially could be converted into a permanent deal for around €5 million. He's having his medical. That was him going off to have his medical, which we understand was happening this afternoon. He'll then head to Casa Milan, which is where all the formal documentation gets signed, and he will be a Milan player. So you can see he's in Italy. Only a matter of time now before this one gets confirmed. And the 34-year-old who won everything with Manchester City is saying goodbye to the Etihad.
Yeah, I'm sure City will miss him. He's been a great servant. So, Walker gone, James, or on his way out. 2 defenders in and a forward. Are City going to strengthen in midfield?
Well, the rebuild continues, and what is fascinating is City have spent more in this January window than all 20 Premier League clubs did in the last January window, which shows you how quiet it was last January. It shows you how busy City are being in this transfer window. They could be adding more signings. We know that number 6 position, Rodri out for probably the rest of the season. They're looking at whether or not they can strengthen in that area. So one player that's been spoken about is Douglas Luiz. It looks like he may leave Juventus in some capacity in this transfer window. He only joined from Villa in the summer, but it looks like he could leave potentially on loan to a club he was at before in the form of Manchester City. It's no formality they do any more business. I think they've done the bulk of their work, but I think if they could get in a midfielder, potentially a left back, we were speaking about Cambiasso last week as well, they'll be really plumber. But because of the form, because of the injuries, it's happening now. They've acted really quickly. Yeah,
you say Luiz was a City player, wasn't he? Never played, was out on loan all the time. Mark, I want to talk Nottingham Forest. We were saying yesterday they wanted Johan Wissa. What are the developments today?
Yeah, well, the offer, which we understand to be worth less than £22 million, has been rejected out of hand by Brentford. No question about Wissa's quality. Thomas Frank has spoke glowingly about him over the course of the last few weeks. I was at St Mary's a few weeks ago to watch Brentford put 5 past Southampton, and the one thing that I was hugely impressed with was his relationship and his partnership with Brian Mbeumo. Together, between them, 31 goal involvements this season. And that man, Johan Wissa, you can see on your screen, is their top Premier League goal scorer. More goals in the Premier League than Ivan Toney, which gives you an indication as to just how important he is. One other interesting fact which I really like, according to Y-Scout data, which is a scouting system that most Premier League clubs use, his goals per minute ratio is better than Cole Palmer's. Which shows you about just how good he has been, how effective he is. And as I say, he's a huge part of that front three at Brentford that's been so good this season. Well, one interesting thing about this, and perhaps why we're seeing a little bit of movement and his name being linked with potentially leaving Brentford, he's into the last 18 months of his current deal. So in the summer, he'll be down to 12 months. And you know the price starts to go a bit low there. And that's where Brentford may be saying, look, do we give him a new contract? Or do we capitalise on selling off the back of what has been an incredible season so far? However, he's a big part of Thomas Frank's plans. And Thomas Frank has said quite consistently, we will not sell him. Brian Mbeumo, we will not sell him. These players are key for us this season, and under no circumstances do we want to sell them. But every player has a price.
Indeed. So you can see why Nottingham Forest are interested in him. And the Forest manager was also asked about interest in Matheus Cunha. This is what he had to say this afternoon.
I don't know anything about that. How can I comment about that? I'm so sorry to disappoint you. The ambition is not measured by that. The ambition is the way we operate, the way we want to improve ourselves as a team. Because if we improve as a team, the club will be better to the challenge that we have ahead of us. The ambition is measured, but how we are doing and what we want to achieve.
So Nuno's not saying too much, but it feels like we're going to be talking about Cunha for the rest of this window. Would you agree, James?
Well, from Wolves' point of view, he's not for sale. They're adamant he's not for sale, but we know 5 Premier League clubs, including Arsenal, are interested in signing him. And why wouldn't you be? He's been sensational for Wolves this season. He's not signed that new contract yet. We understand Wolves are quite relaxed about that. It's thought that a fee of around £60 million could potentially bring Wolves to the table. That could be something they could be interested in. The issue is Wolves are just above the relegation zone on goal difference. He's going to be a key part in whether or not they stay in the Premier League. So that's going to be the argument that Wolves will be having with themselves internally right now, because if Cunha stays, there's a good chance they can stay in the top flight. If he goes, their chances diminish massively. They're under no financial pressure to sell because of the work they've done in the summer, selling the likes of Max Kilman and Pedro Neto. So they're in quite a good position right now. But if a huge deal, an offer comes in January, it would be very hard to turn it down, you'd think, because there's good money on the table. He's a player that you think would need to be playing for an elite club.
His boss criticised him for his attitude, his body language this week. Do you think his head's been turned, Mark?
Of course. When you get spoken about and linked to some of the big clubs in the Premier League, and there is potentially 2 or 3 or 4 times the salary on the table, and you're in a relegation fight, there's no question that you'll be looking and thinking, maybe it's time for me to move on. Is this an opportunity I need to explore and look at? There was a lot of talk at the start of the window that Wolves were confident they'd get him to sign a new contract. Obviously, that looks far from happening at this stage. And with any player, he's a human being at the end of the day. So when you get linked to the big club, your head's going to be turned.
Yeah, indeed. All right, let's talk Manchester United again. Let's go back to United. Feels like there's quite a lot to be sorted out for them. Let's just run through these. Mark, if you start with Marcus Rashford on the end there.
Yeah, we got some information earlier on this afternoon on Sky Sports News with regards to any potential move to Barcelona, which we are being told is receding by the day. That's because the sporting director at Barcelona, Deco, has said the most important thing is contract renewals. Now, we know that Barcelona are under really difficult financial parameters. They're struggling to register the players that they already have, let alone signing new players. So therefore, any potential deal would have to be something that suits them financially. And we know that Marcus Rashford is on huge wages, so therefore Manchester United would have to pay a big chunk of that to facilitate any move over to Barcelona. Obviously, it looks unlikely at this stage that anything could potentially happen, but we know that his representatives have met a number of clubs in Europe as they continue to explore any potential move to make in this January window.
OK, James, we've already covered Garnacho. What about Patrick Dorgu here?
Well, United's director of negotiations, Matt Hargreaves, was in Milan speaking to Lecce about a potential deal. We understand Lecce very unwilling to sell in this transfer window, but they're braced themselves for a bid from Manchester United. They're looking for something around £38 million. We think United's opening offer or opening exchange when they've been negotiating, they want to look at around £30 million top, and that including the bonuses. Left back is a real priority area for Manchester United in this window. I think if you ask Ruben Amorim, you can sign one player, one position in this transfer window. It would be a left wing back. They've had Diego Dallo playing out of position on the left hand side. Tara Malacia is just regaining match sharpness after being out for more than a year. Luke Shaw not playing much football over the course of the last few seasons. They look unbalanced on the left-hand side. They need a left back in. That's a priority position for Manchester United. But Dorgu wants the move, we understand. Two other players United have made checks on, Tyrick Mitchell at Palace and Ryan Aït-Nouri at Wolves. But it looks like Dorgu is the man they really want in this transfer window.
OK, and what about Anthony, Mark?
Yeah, just waiting for official...
Mark Anthony? Yeah, OK, fine. Yeah.
Just waiting for official confirmation on this one. Real Betis loan, all agreed. Just waiting for the final contract to be signed off and Real Betis to say, yeah, he's our man for the rest of the season.
Can't be a bit of Shakespeare referencing on the transfer show. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, loads to discuss. We'll talk Arsenal, West Ham as they close in on a striker. Could it be one in and one out at Celtic? Well, it might be. Stay with us and find out. See you in a moment.
Brighton, but what about the situation at Manchester United? Well, club officials left Italy last night. That is after holding talks with Lecce over a deal to sign Patrick Dorgu, and they held discussions as well with Napoli over a move to sell Alejandro Garnacho. Dave, just sort of set the scene for us. Where are we with both of those?
Yeah, so talks have been held this week. We've seen pictures of those Manchester United officials in Italy, where they've been holding talks with Lecce over a move for Dorgu. It's expected that United will formalise their interest with an offer for the player. I think United were looking at an offer, or under discussion was around £30 million, and Lecce started off what they were looking for was around 38. So it seems like there's work to do in order to meet in the middle there. I think there's a little bit of confidence from United's side that they might be able to meet somewhere in the middle. And then similarly on Garnacho, there's a bit of a gap between what Napoli are willing to offer and what United are looking for. Napoli were looking for an offer or a fee around £46.5 million as a total package. United started off much higher than that, but I think their stance has softened a little bit in the last few days during those talks, and they've been looking for around £55 million. So again, work to do in terms of meeting in the middle on those fees. I think Napoli are also looking at alternatives. They're looking at Karim Adeyemi from Borussia Dortmund, so that's one to keep an eye on in the background if they can't, well, get things moving with Garnacho.
What do you make of the sort of chatter and talk around Garnacho and Chelsea at the moment? Do Chelsea need him? Would he fit in there? Can you see it happening?
I think, I don't know. I think it suits the profile that Chelsea have been going for in the last few windows in terms of age and the experience that he has at his age. Like we said, when he burst to the scene at United, he was playing a lot of games this season. He's played more games than all of the wide men at Chelsea. And sometimes United fans think that that's actually a bad thing because of his age, and, you know, there's going to be inconsistencies. You know, Enzo Maresca has said it with his side. You know, you can't expect 21, 22-year-olds to have a consistent season throughout the season. So I think it makes sense. I'm not sure if it's a move where he's going to start week in, week out, or whether it's going to disrupt maybe Sancho's progression that we've seen there, Madueke, Neto as well. But maybe with the Mudryk situation, João Felix has been linked with a move away as well. The money that they're asking for. You said earlier that United and Chelsea have got a good relationship, but I think the fee that they're asking for, I see it being one of those moves that could potentially go until like the last day of the window.
Yeah, for sure. But, you look at that fee and then you look at the potential. Something that Chelsea do quite well, isn't it? They've signed a lot of young players. And I think it's like, where does Garnacho fit in the squad? Garnacho's played both on the right and the left and looked very good in both of those positions. Recently in the FA Cup game against Arsenal, got himself a really good assist where he was aggressive, he won the ball back and made the right decision. And I think we've got to keep going back 20 years old, 20 years old, 20 years old, because we look at him like he's a 25-year-old. You've got to think Mohamed Salah and Sadio Mane, they hit their peak around 25, 26. So this player's got a massive amount of potential, and Manchester United would be silly to sell him now, given where he could go. But at the same time, the financial constraints at United at the moment, this might have to happen to allow someone like a Dorgu to come in that's a little bit more important in terms of the system right now. But you don't sell your best young players, do you? So it's difficult.
Chelsea are in the market for a wide player as well. Jamie Gittins is another one that they're looking at. You do feel like if they are to push the button on Garnacho, there would have to be a fairly high-profile departure. Obviously, João Felix is one, maybe. Christopher Nkunku is another one that we've talked about in this transfer window as well. So if they were to push forward with Garnacho, you would feel like they might have to move someone out.
Yeah. Just back, because you've all sort of touched on the fee here, and put into context, Dave, why United are so sort of desperate to sell him when he is an academy graduate, only 20, and with all this potential as well. But just put into context the financial situation at Manchester United at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think United would say that they're not desperate to sell anyone at this point. I think there is a kind of realisation that no player is untouchable at Manchester United, and I think it's important also to point out that all the Premier League clubs, as we found out the other week, are compliant with PSR for the accounting period ending 2024, and this is the final year of those dreaded PSR as it stands, as we know it right now. But clubs are still having to be mindful of their financials up until the end of this accounting period in 2025. They're going to be trialling a squad cost ratio style system from next season. I think United do have a bit of manoeuvrability to sign players in this window and in the summer as well, in order to back Ruben Amorim with some of the players that he would like to fit into. Talking about the system there, he needs wing backs to play this system that he wants. So I think there is a little bit of manoeuvrability within the financials. But I mean, just to put into context, even just today, I think that, the Athletic, in an article by Mark Critchley, has cited the September accounts, saying that United still have a net figure of £319 million in transfer fee instalments to pay for players that they've already signed, and £154 million of that is due within a year. So it just puts into context a little bit the financials that are ongoing at Manchester United at the moment. And I think they would like to give Amorim more money to spend, and in order to do that, some of their most saleable assets are going to be touted around, are going to be on the market. And you look at the United squad, have they got loads of players that they can sell? No. It's down to one or two that they can get a good fee for in order to try and help rebuild that squad.
Yeah, well, another one who might be on the way out is Marcus Rashford. We're still awaiting news on this situation. We know that he trained yesterday, like Alejandro Garnacho, with the first team ahead of that Europa League tie with Rangers this evening. We know, yes, there's been interest from Barcelona. His camp met with the Barca execs. That was earlier this week. There's also been interest from Borussia Dortmund as well. How do we see the next couple of weeks going? Do we think that he will ultimately actually end up staying at United? Is that the most likely scenario?
It is, yeah, especially with Eric Garcia. Looked like he was going to go to Como last week. He's now stated today that he wants to stay at the football club. That's reports in Spain. Then you're looking at Orejo's going to sign a new contract by reports. Ansu Fati is probably the only player that Barcelona could look at. So right now, Marcus Rashford should make the best decision for himself. Does he want to stay at Manchester United, or does he want to compete at a really high level? Barcelona's probably the only club that it would work out with. Hansi Flick and Rashford would be a match made in heaven. And, we go back to Marcus Rashford. He's had 3 seasons in the Premier League where he's been directly involved in over 20 goals. That's very, very good. His goal record at Manchester United, a little inconsistent on season to season, but overall is very, very good. And we go back to the same point. He's the joint top scorer at Manchester United and he's not played since December. That's still there. He'd be an asset to United versus Rangers. He'd be an asset back into the Premier League. So for me, it'd be integrating him back in as quick as possible. And then you're at a point where if the Barcelona move comes at the back end of the window, cool, that's a great option for Marcus Rashford. Could explore that and move forward.
Going to be interesting, isn't it, to see what happens over the next 11 days. Right, coming up on Transfer Talk, we're going to be speaking to French football expert Jonathan Johnson, who has news on Mo Salah. And also, we're going to discuss Arsenal's search for a striker as well. City, we've talked about Arsenal. What about the situation at Manchester United then? Well, club officials left Italy last night. That is after holding talks with Lecce over a deal to sign Patrick Dorgu, and they also held discussions with Napoli as well over a move to sell Alejandro Garnacho. Dave, there's a lot going on at Manchester United at the moment. On those two deals, where do we stand on both of those?
Well, I'll get to Garnacho in a moment, but let's talk first of all about Dorgu. I think Lecce's preference was not to sell the player in this window, but I think they are expecting United to formalise the talks that have been ongoing with a proper offer, a formal offer for the player. I think United officials have been in Italy this week to discuss deals for Dorgu and obviously Garnacho as well. And United, the initial thoughts and offer under discussion for Dorgu was around £30 million for the player. I think Lecce started out negotiations looking for around 38 million. So I think there's work to do there in terms of a meeting in the middle for both sides. And then what about Alejandro Garnacho as well? They're still apart, Napoli and Manchester United, on negotiations for Garnacho. I think United have softened their stance a little bit on their asking price. But for Napoli, I think they're maintaining that they only want to pay between sort of 42 million and 46.5, which translates up to 55 million euros for the player. So it's expected that the two clubs will meet again in the next few days in the hope of finding an agreement. I think Napoli are quite optimistic that they will meet in the middle on a fee. At the same time, Napoli are also looking at other options as well, and one of their other options is Karim Adeyemi from Borussia Dortmund. So they're keeping something up their sleeve, just something on the back burner in case this doesn't work out with United.
Yeah. That's the sort of Napoli Garnacho side of things. Just on him, you know, is Chelsea a real possibility? Could you see that happening, and where would he fit there? Because they're one of the clubs who have been reported to be interested in him.
You'd say there's definitely a space for him. Chelsea love signing wingers. You know, he's another winger that could join the squad to play in multiple positions. You know, with Mudryk and his situation, there's a question mark there whether he's going to be able to play. So you've got a player that's got good quality, that's young, 20 years old. His goal involvements this season have been good. I think it's just the evolution of him in that next stage. It's a coaching position, which Enzo Maresca has shown. He's worked with a lot of wingers already and improved them. So it could be a good move for him. But at the same time, Manchester United as a football club, would they want to sell a player like that to a rival? They've already done it though with Jadon Sancho. Mason Mount's got the other way. So the relationship between the two clubs is obviously very good. It's just I think Manchester United would have preference to go to sell to Napoli, really.
Yeah, I think so. I think from Garnacho's point of view, I think Napoli is, they're hard fans to please over in Naples, but when they do love you,
very dedicated.
They absolutely love you. So he's got an opportunity if he does go there to write himself into Napoli folklore a little bit. The other side of that is if he goes to Chelsea, who's he going to be fighting with for minutes there? And yeah, he's going to be working under a great coach in Enzo Maresca. Almost similar coaches in a way, Conte and Maresca, because, positional. They will tell you exactly where you need to stand in every moment of every game and the runs you need to make. So in that sense, he could be working under similar kinds of managers, maybe different temperaments.
Just a little bit.
But I guess for him, it's about who's gonna love me the most, who's gonna put me in their team.
Yeah, he likes to be loved, Garnacho. Let's bring the other boys in. Yeah, we all do. We do. These two do as well. Let's bring the other boys in. Sam, would you take him at Chelsea?
I think he suits the profile of what Enzo Maresca and Chelsea have been doing in the last few years, in terms of his age and in terms of his experience. We forget he burst onto the scene at United at the age of 18 and he's played so many games for them. He's already played 31 games this season. He's got the most goals out of all the wingers at Chelsea and even at Manchester United, and the assists as well. I think the only area that he could probably improve on and that Chelsea would probably need more from him is take-ons completed. But I think it would be a good sign, and I also think he's slightly becoming underrated? I know he's a player that's inconsistent, but he's only 20, Manny.
I think there's a lot of factors in this, and when you look at the take-ons, that could be because Manchester United aren't as on the front foot as Chelsea would be this season. But I think it's a difficult one because Sancho's been good since going to Chelsea, and would you expect Garnacho to play on that left-hand side as well? He's a different player to Sancho. Sancho likes to stand someone up and maybe wait for the overlap, or sometimes cut inside and find a pass, whereas Garnacho is a lot more direct. Even though the take-ons are low, yet again, I think that could be to do with the fact that Manchester United are a bit on the back foot. But I think he could suit Chelsea. My problem is, for what he's going to cost, is it really going to change their fortunes, especially this season?
I think at the age that he's at now, I'm sure if he continues in the form that he's at, he's going to be of a lot more value in the next few years. And also, we've seen that, you know, they said Sancho was done at Manchester United. He's come to Chelsea. He's got more assists than he ever had at United. And Garnacho could be similar, but I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, I think that one is going to rumble on a little bit, isn't it? We'll talk more about Garnacho a little bit later on. We're also, by the way, awaiting news on the Marcus Rashford situation. Did train with the squad yesterday ahead of their Europa League tie with Rangers this evening. We know there's interest from Barcelona. His camp met with Barca execs on Tuesday this week, and there's also been interest from Borussia Dortmund as well. Right, what a busy start to the show. We're going to just get our breath back, basically. Kyle Walker on his way out of Manchester City. He's on his way to AC Milan right now. Omar Mamouche has been confirmed as a Manchester City player this morning. We're going to hear from the man himself very shortly, so stay with us. Coming up next as well, we'll be talking about one of the most in-demand players in the Premier League, in Matheus Cunha.